Capitalism of today, from its extractive perspective, is very similar to colonialism of the past. 90% of the fundamentals of today's Western civilization were learned by the Westerners from studying the colonies. It's very well known that if only further 20% of the rest of the world population besides the global north, if the further 20% joins the bandwagon to live like the West, we will need 2 more planets. And we don't have those planets. I personally feel that West wins the war, any war, cultural war or political war, or economic war, trade war, ecological war, war at the level of all the international conventions, because it first convinces its own population. Just transition is possible. Although in my eyes, it's an old wine in new bottles. So I don't think so humans can change. But something interesting is happening, and that is nature is forcing us to change.
Dear followers of Ecologia Podcast, I'm glad to have you here again, and this time it will be in English language because our guest, Dr. Heman Agrawal, is coming from India, and we will get the next hours talking about different important topics related to development, transition, decolonization, and other stuff and thematics. So, Dr. Heman, he's a teacher in economic philosophy and governance. He worked both in Germany and in India. He wrote many books, and he was here in Tunisia with us through a green lecture to talk about just transition, which is an interesting term that allow us to ask different questions about the transition and the justice at the same time. So we are glad to have Dr. Heman with us. Welcome, Heman. This is your the second time in Tunis?
No, the first time in North Africa.
North Africa.
The first time in the Mediterranean region at all.
Okay, so it's quite different from where you came. Yeah, let's jump directly.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, how far can we consider the capitalism is a different way of colonialism?
I mean, that is, there's no doubt about it. The issue is that our minds are schooled by Western way of education, where our views are segmentalized, compartmentalized. So it means we have definitions. So obviously, if you say to somebody capitalism, he'll have a different set of parameters to measure what is capitalism, and he'll have a difficulty accepting, especially if he's an economist from a university in India or from Cambridge or from Germany or even from Tunisian university. I would guess an economist will never see that it is same as colonialism, and colonialism will have a different definition. But I think there are similarities. Because having said that there are similarities which I'll just delve into, I think that will not make capitalism directly colonialism in the definitorical terms, in definition terms. However, let me just delve into the similarities. The purpose of colonialism, which we have known, and I'm coming from India, I must say here for the podcast listeners, because I would think Tunisians will not know so much about India, little bit, as Indians don't know about Tunisia, that if there's one country on the face of the planet which was colonized the maximum times, it was India.
Yeah, 350 years.
No.
More?
1,280 years.
Oh.
Non-stop.
Before Britain?
Yeah, Britain is the last chapter. So there are 2 big chapters. The European colonization and the pre-European colonization. Can give it in 1 minute. The European chapter began in 14th century with the Portuguese arriving. Then came the French. Then there were Portuguese-Spanish and French wars on Indian land, imagine. And then they divided India, some part to Portugal, some to French. They stayed for 100 years. At the same time, Dutch came. They took some. It's a big country. Then the Danish came. Austrians came, And they all took some pockets. And then the British came, and British are the most crafty people, most diplomatic people. So they tricked everybody out through contracts and talking. And they're very nice to talk. And then they took over the whole thing. And the British invention, not exactly their original invention, but one of the first inventions together with the Dutch were the concept of a company, which prior to that did not exist. So we have an East India Company made in London, and that was new to Indians. India was ruled by, like most of the world, even Germany, was ruled by kings and monarchs and noblemen and barons and all that. So then the British come with a very modern concept of a company. And, let's have a contract. And they felt so privileged, the Indian kings and the traders. Let's have a contract. And the contract always denotes for their culture. You see, Asia, Islamic, Asian, Southern cultures have a different honesty about similar terms. There's a different fairness. Not always. Let's not glorify them either. But the British came, had the terms of the trade, and they thought it's all fair. Then they realized after a few years, nothing was fair about those terms of the trade. Hence began the colonization through a company. That is one way. Then they were also divide and rule. Divide e impera, no? The Latin term. So they were making the kings fight to each other. Now that's one chapter, the second chapter. What I did not want to say even on the stage, because I am in Tunisia and it's a predominantly Muslim Arab country, that actually the colonization of India began with the Muslim colonization. They came in the 8th century. The Arabs came. The Persians came. Ask me who didn't come. Turks came. The Uzbeks came. The Central Asians. The Mongols came.
But this is the history of the world, the 2,000 years.
Yeah. But they actually colonized, looted, plundered the same way. The difference is the Muslims came and became a part of India. So today, India is the second largest Muslim population. They are Indians. Muslim is not stranger, is not a foreigner. Europeans did not become Indian. They came, they treated India with racism as something below you. They looted, plundered, and went away. They extracted the wealth. Now that's the most important word which helps us to transition to capitalism. Capitalism is about extraction. So capitalism is about extraction. It's about contracts, but contracts are no more bilateral. There are bilateral also, but then we have WTO, we have IMF, we have the World Bank, we have all kind of development aid agencies. So it's a good cop, bad cop strategy. So there are, on one hand, their companies extract. On the one hand, there are organizations giving aid. They give with one hand, take with the other hand, maybe.
Conditioning behavior.
Conditioning behavior, capturing. And when you talk to the individual peoples in the Western world or Northern world, they get angry at you because they think, how can you talk like this? You're so ideological. Because they see their own society in the realm of democracy as individuals, and also not only democracy, what we don't talk in the global South is a concept of methodological individualism. Their society is individualized. Every individual is a democratic entity in itself.
I like the methodology.
That's the concept. It's by Hayek, I think, the Austrian economist, philosopher called Friedrich von Hayek. Maybe it's from him. Because it's a podcast, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he took from somewhere else. I don't know. But I read it with him when I was studying him. So this atomized individual has very atomized, like a molecule, like a little set. He's in a cellular thing. Every person in the West thinks, I'm so unique, I'm so different. Thereby, they've created a society which is very like a robot, like clones, a very similar mindset. Because all have one goal, maximizing their own wealth and their own happiness,
Ego.
which is predefined as having materialism. Happiness is related to materialism. The whole idea of self-realization, in German you say Selbstverwirklichung, is related to work, and accumulate, and do not share. Because sharing is not a part of capitalism. You are an individual. And every individual is an individual who will make he's a master of his own destiny. So they have this belief in willpower, the willpower of individual. And the point is they lose track and the sight that this willpower is only as good as it is. There is a whole set behind of institutions preparing the grounds for them to operate their willpower. There's a state, there are banks, there's strong currencies, there's a trade relations and north-south dichotomy. I mean, how do you call it? Fall in one direction, the north being up. So the individual doesn't see that there's a whole set of institutions and principles enabling him or her to be like what they are in their daily lives. So I just defined, your question was only about capitalism and colonialism, and I diverged a bit and went into the individual, because it was important for me, because I live in the West as I live in India. And so I've seen the West, when I talk about these things, they have difficulties understanding it because they are subjectively caught up in that system, and they are also reapers of the fruits of capitalism. So there is no interest in the cognition or in the subconscious cognition to be critical of that, because they're living from it and they're profiting from it.
This is the common normal situation. They will not accept something else less than that, at least.
Yeah, and then they might even blame the global South individuals that, oh, you are blaming us only because you are not like us. The day you will become like us, you will stop bickering and mickering and crying like a child. Oh, global North is capitalistic exploiter. The day you will, and it is proven right. Look at Singapore, look at Dubai, look at Hong Kong, look at the rich elite class of the global South. They don't cry and sulk. Then they come up and say, oh, either the leftists of the global South, the left-leaning communists, Marxists, or the environmentalists of the global South, and also their own. So let's be clear about one thing, and let's be fair to the global North. Before the colonization, let's forget about the traditional colonization, which we talked about, the Arabs, the Persian, the extraction, the looting, then the Portuguese, the French, the British. Let's forget about that. It's modern day capitalism, last 150, 180 years. Let's say let's give it a more definition-based name. Industrially, technologically driven, accelerated, consumer-based market economy. That's capitalism.
And dependence. And dependence.
And the dependence comes. I think I lost the track what I was saying. This particular form of capitalism, let's be fair to the North. First, colonize its own people. Even the population of global North is a colonized population. As if every Northerner is a bad guy or a woman is a bad woman, as if they are so parasitic people, they are so bad human beings, they want to rob the global South. No, they don't know. They have nowhere to go. Where do you expect a German or a British or American to go? They just live caught up in their own country. They just live the system which has been imposed on them. So in the end, it becomes an elitist theory. It means there are elites of the global North who are imposing a system, who are the profiteers, the big profiteers of the whole thing. And they devise a system which makes them tremendously rich and powerful. And for that, they use the fodder as in what the animals eat. They use their own population also as fodder. And then, of course, after their own population, global South population is irrelevant for them. It's also fodder. Keep producing, keep working cheap for us. So I think maybe we should also talk about the elite theory. There's something called elite theory. There's a theory in economics called elite theory or sociology. So and then they need in global North, the elites there need elites in the global South. So they're cooperation between elites, and there's a cooperation between global South and global North oppressed.
Is there any way to link the concept of elite people and monarchy?
It's all about names and language. Of course, we can call the elites today as monarchs of yesterday. We can call the monarchs of yesterday as elites of today. Yeah, I mean, the behavior is very similar like monarchs. But yeah, so what does it help? Now, again, the Western mind is so compartmentalized. If you use the word monarch, they think of Queen Elizabeth and Prince Charles and Princess Diana, and the royal houses of Denmark and Holland and all that, and Belgium. So one can say that there's a link there. So I would say yes, capitalism of today, from its extractive perspective, is very similar to colonialism of the past. So in that way, capitalism is a continuation of colonialism. Another very important point, I feel, perhaps every small school child or college student around the world will know that the birth of modern day capitalism is from colonialism. We know capitalism needs certain conditions to start, that you can even look at a small entrepreneur. Even let's look at your studio where you're sitting. You need some capital. So you go to the bank, you ask for money. I want to buy my cameras. I want to buy an apartment. I want to start my company, right? So you need some capital investment. You need knowledge transfer. So if the European had not come to the global south to colonize and extract their wealth. So I gave that example in the lecture day for yesterday also, that when the British came to the shores of India, it was the richest nation on the face of earth, all documented, not invented by me, having 27% of the global economic output share was alone India's. And when they left 350 years later, India was reduced to 1.7 or 2% of the global share. So, so that means, where did the wealth go? And then England was one of the poorest nations when they came. And when they left, they were the richest. So means it's very clear. The wealth went from here to there. Mm. So, so that provided them a leapfrogging, a jump ahead with that capital. But then, to the praise of the West, which again I think I upset a couple of people in the audience. There was one gentleman who thought that, why am I praising the West? Is that I was using it more sarcastically. Is that West did something. So let me give a metaphor, an example. There are two kinds of robbers. Let's imagine there are two kinds of robber and thief. One goes, robs the house, goes out, goes and gambles, goes to prostitutes, goes to have fun, drinks a lot, and the money's gone. Then again, after 10 days, 20 days, maybe a month, he's again in need of money. There's another robber, second one, who goes and robs the house.
Good-looking girl.
Whatever, maybe George Clooney. And he comes out, Ocean's 11 movie, the heist, bank heist. He comes out, takes the loot, invests in shares, in mutual funds, in the global markets, buys a house, gives it on rent, so he can sustain. That's what I think the West did. They invested the money very well. Now then comes the second thing, which I'm very praiseworthy, I find, about the West, and I'm in awe of them. That's what I said that day also 2 days back in the lecture, that they must have done something right, that we are so crazy to send our kids there, and we are so attracted to them, means they must have done something right. What did they do right? They created a movement of rationalization. And that movement of rationalization premised the death of God, the idea of God. I know can I talk these things?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So they did not kill God. I mean, Christianity is very much alive there. They like to give the statistics that, Christianity is going down and all. No. Christianity, or a theology of Christianity, sublimed and became a part of the table. I know it sounds crazy. This table is Christian. It sounds crazy. Car is Christian. Design is Christian. Now, what does it mean? It's a worldview. It's a worldview of looking at objects. It's a worldview, that a certain worldview coming from, and it's not Bible. See, we mistake Christianity for Bible. That's would be Christianity is Christianity came from Middle East, from Jerusalem. It's an Asian religion. Went over via Rome, had its schisma, and then there was Orthodoxy and Catholicism. And Catholicism further had a schisma, became Protestant. So all these movements are going on parallelly, and all these movements are slow movements to become rational. So if you look at Protestant ethics, which is the latest after Martin Luther, is the most rational in comparison to Catholicism. If you study Catholicism, is more rational to the predecessor, the Orthodox Church. So, and then if you study the Orthodox Church to the actual teachings and the preachings of Mr. Christ, Jesus Christ, then even that sounds more rational. So it is a permanent rationalization process. What does rationalization mean? That first of all, it's a disillusionment and disenchantment from the natural world. An Indian, till today in the village, thinks a tree is a god. A cow is goddess. He will never cut the cow to eat because it's goddess. Even there are Muslim sects in India who will not cut a sheep or a goat because they are so influenced by the Hindu thought that everything vegetarian is good, everything comes from nature is good, everything nature is godly. You cannot kill somebody. If you cannot give life, don't kill, don't take life. Now that's fundamental Buddhist Hindu ethics.
Sufi.
Sufi also. And so disenchantment from these thoughts. Rationalization means that you suddenly don't revere the tree the way it is. You can go, if you don't revere the tree,
you accept it.
You accept, more than accept, you can now intervene into it. You can take the tree, chop it off, put it on the table, look at it, go inside the molecular levels of it. The moment you see the molecular levels, you can suddenly get into biochemistry, you can get into the physics of it, the mechanics, you understand the tree. You can take the fibers of the tree, of the wood, and then make paper out of it. You can make other things out of it. So what I'm trying to say is that so many parallel things were happening in the West. They were colonizing the rest of the world, which was helping them bring a lot of money and extraction of wealth. They were studying the other worlds. They didn't know, 90% of the fundamentals of today's Western civilization were learned by the Westerners from studying the colonies. To the extent that I would say they didn't even know what a bazaar is, what functioning mercantilism is, what functioning markets are. They saw it in India. India is the oldest economy, like China. They were trading. They had insurance companies in India. Without a firm, they didn't have a company, but they had the principles which is similar to today's insurance, that some trading ship is going to Rome. India is trading in the 4th century before Christ with Rome, and they already had that if the ship goes down in the Indian Ocean, that somebody will pay for it. So that's called insurance today, isn't it? And before the ship sailed, the merchants have to pay something to that person who gathers the money and says, if it goes down, I'll pay.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So these principles are all there in place. It's nothing. So what West did is took the old knowledge and made it into a more stylized, more effective, more institutionalized knowledge, more efficient knowledge, more written down knowledge. Most of the Asian cultures and tropical cultures are oral cultures. India being probably one of the few exceptions, because in India, the written tradition, writing, scribe, goes to thousands of years. But if you look at African, sub-Saharan countries, if you look at the Mayas and the Aztecs in Latin America, look at many tribes and cultures of Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Borneo, they are mostly oral cultures. They did not write their knowledge. New subjects came up in universities of the West in the 14th, 15th century, Cambridge and Utrecht, and then people came to study. So the colonial masters and their people will come back and will tell and lecture how they saw a monkey, an elephant. Nobody knew here anything. And then people will go, young girls and boys then, 15th, from Europe will go with the next ship and will study those things. The gorillas and also humans were made into like a zoo animal. You know, they'll see a black man, like an African man, an Indian with a brown skin, and it became so exotic. So anthropology came up, ethnology came up as subjects. We have to study, and then these compartmentalized, individualized anthropologists and ethnologists will come back. A woman or a man will come back and write books. He or she is only thinking that I'm serving my subject and I'm contributing to the knowledge of the world, not knowing that some economists and policymakers are reading their books and taking that knowledge to to exploit further. So it's all things were happening. Religion was getting emancipated there. As I said about rationalization. And in Asian world and the Southern world, they realized, it sounds like a conspiracy theory. I don't know. I'm just being myself a cultural anthropologist, if you like. Or I'm thinking from my perspective, if I know your weakness, that you need your drugs every evening, then I have you in my hand. So if they know, oh, look at those cultures of the South we are studying, they are so God-fearing, oh, they are so nature-fearing, then I, as a colonizer, would maintain that. If I maintain somebody's fear, then I can control their mind. If I maintain their fear, I can control their minds. Isn't it? So that's a long answer to your first question only.
Yeah. But let me move to...
And she's about to sleep. So.
Something... why it's not possible that the global South, take the lifestyle of the North.
Can you ask the question again?
Why it's not possible that the global South copy or take the lifestyle of the North?
It's very well known that if only further 20% of the rest of the world population besides the global North, if the further 20% joins the bandwagon to live like the West, we will need 2 more planets. And we don't have those planets. So what to do? So now the global North is in a fix. Fix means in English?
Must be staying in...
Yeah, either to contain them there where they are.
Yeah.
But the actual call is... But, their Christian ethics tells them about fairness. Their own Christian ethics, the Judeo-Christian ethics, the Abrahamic ethics of Islam, Christianity, and Judaism says of fairness and justice. And like even Hindu ethics or Buddhist ethics, all the world religions talk of fairness and justice and love. According to that, their own Christian ethics, they should be the ones going down. They should be the ones contracting in their consumption. But yeah, then the same cultures of the North have the saying, I know it in German because I live in Germany, that I don't know if I even say it correctly in German, that die Wille ist da, der Fleisch ist schwach, something like, there is a willpower to be fair and just, but the pleasures of the flesh are more stronger.
I like this.
The tongue, the eating and the clothing and the nice house. And flesh means, to travel around. People in the North knows that meat eating. Today, more and more people in the West are turning vegetarians. That is where I explain this example about the flesh. And they know that meat eating gives you heart problems, cardiac troubles. And then there are counter people saying, no, our ancestors lived that way, but they were working hard. Now we don't work that hard. We just sit around, So do we need to eat all this meat? So people are turning vegetarian. So many people want to become vegetarian, but cannot. Because the taste of the flesh is there. So what I'm trying to say is, so I don't know. I lost the track. So you had a question. Yeah.
At the same time, you mentioned the middle income trap, because in some ways we are stuck in this situation that people reach in some level of income with the hope to move to the next stage, but he will not be able to move to the next stage.
So I made I wrote actually a lot of papers, together 27, 28 pages, which I lost in a computer crash before I came here. And there was a table I made to present as a PowerPoint in this lecture, Green Lecture, in which I am comparing the basic data of European Union, then USA, then I combine it as West, Global North, then I take China, India, Brazil, South Africa, and few BRICS, and then I give a BRICS. And so I take the total GDP, the per capita income, the population, the area of the BRICS area, total, how many million square kilometers. What I'm hitting at, and I lost that file, unfortunately. It was very well prepared. And then I also look at the per head per capita carbon output in these areas, and the GHGs, greenhouse gases,
Okay.
which are more than only carbon dioxide. And also ecological footprint. So there were 7 parameters I developed, and I made a chart. But so I don't have the data exactly in my head. So let me put it this way: the per capita income of Tunisia is $4,900. India is 2,800 or 2,900. Germany is, because I live in Germany, around
25.
yeah,
25.
55.
55.
$1,000, imagine,
Yeah.
yeah. And then America is a mind-blowing 75. That doesn't mean that every American has that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so it's an
economy,
average.
yeah.
It's an average. Yeah. It's a way of measuring. It's not even a very correct way to depict and illustrate the reality. And also, it shows the accumulative power of your economy, how much you've accumulated. Even if the elites are in possession and there are poor people in US and Germany, it's just an average. But the total trillions and trillions, like US is by $29 trillion yearly output, GDP. India is now hitting 4 trillion. China is about 15, 16 trillion, I think. I may be getting the numbers wrong. I need to have the chart in front of me. So what I'm saying is, China only has $13,000. But China and India, both in 1992, 91, had very similar per capita income. They started with the same thing. And look, the rise of China, like this, both started like this, and China went like this.
Okay. But for 1.5 billion, it's pretty heavy on the planet.
Yeah. There are correlations there and causations are there. Both are there, both correlation and causation, that there's a relationship, causal relationship between rise of the GDP, rise of per capita income, the rise of the destruction of planet. Because what is economics? Economics is a subject which is only running after the reality. It is not on one hand. And it has done its groundwork by infecting the mind through a certain way of looking at things like utility. It's all defined, and the demand supply, the scarcity principle, and the incentive principles. These are 5-6 principles which are fundamentals to capitalistic thinking, incentive thinking, scarcity thinking, that the resources are scarce, markets are the most efficient ways of allocating them, these resources. So these are fundamentals. But I'm saying, when an economy develops, what happens? So economy which is consuming $1,000 per capita, $1,000, and the economy, the same one, becomes $4,000. What has happened? This number is increased from 1,000 to 4,000. It has increased 4 times. Means the population's resource consumption has increased 4 times. Not that they're eating more bread. No. They have more at home, more income in their pockets now.
More possibility.
If they as individuals in the country don't have, but their elites have, means that country, because the world is organized in nation states. So these measurements are done in nation states. And so the nation state is more accurate is per capita, because then it's human beings. We like to talk about humanity. And then West I talked about methodological individualism. So we have to look at an individual in India, in China, in Germany, at least at the quantified number called per capita. So what I'm trying to say is that when China became, and India started the same thing in 1990s, only recent. And today, India is still at 2,900 per capita dollars. And China has reached 13,000. So China is 4 times more than India. And the population is very similar. Both are 1.5 billion. China and India together are 1/3 of the humanity. And now China has served the purpose. So China wants to become like Germany and America, to reach 55,000. But the West all efforts are being driven towards keeping China at 13,000. That's called the middle income trap. Why? Now, that's my personal theory, how are they trying to achieve it? The Western powers, it's a competition. How are they trying to achieve it that China remains at 13,000? by creating a narrative of how China is hegemonic, that in China there are no human rights, how they are suppressing the Muslim people in the western part of China, as if they care of Muslim people, the Western people. So I mean, we are not talking about people. I have to correct myself. It's not Western people. It's the Western geopolitical leaders. And the China geopolitical leaders, the Western
And economy leaders.
economic leader, the Western political economy leaders, the Chinese. So it's the normal people are nice to each other. You know, Germans love Chinese probably at the normal human to human level until their minds are polluted by the
Cheap
media.
friendship.
So you first mobilize your own population, and that's another thing. I personally feel that West wins the war, any war, cultural war or political war, or economic war, trade war, ecological war, war at the level of all the international conventions, because it first convinces its own population. You have to win the war at home. One of the reasons America had to pull out of Vietnam was not that America was losing in the Vietnam War, because there was enough protest from within. So America did not do the PR job well. They have learned from it, and now they do the PR job so well. Then the Gulf-Iraq War first happened in 91. Iraq War happened after 9/11. Afghanistan happened. Now you see protest in the West. Even when Gaza happened, there was a protest in the West, but it is there for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 5 weeks, maybe 2 months and 3 months. Then people go about their lives. It is not the way Vietnam times in the 1960s, late 60s and 70s, that there was enough pressure put from within that America had to withdraw. I mean, that's one reason, not that they withdrew.
In the 70s. Now probably it's different.
Yeah, there are many reasons for them to have pulled out of Vietnam. Cost was rising and they were not getting anywhere, and the resistance happening in Vietnam. So that's an example. I was saying that wars are won at home, first at home also, through the narrative. Yeah. So we have to. So now I have a feeling that in this entire thing, which we have discussed till now, I have been overcritical of the West and the North. But also have said few things that the first victims of global North and their economic technology of the way they economize and they run economies, organize economy, operate in world markets which are very extractive of resources from south to the north. The first victims are their own population.
But the global South has the responsibility also. The South also.
Yeah, we have to ask ourselves what model we have delivered. Have we failed or have we delivered? I mean, Gandhi was shot dead by the right wing in India, as that's what the narrative in India is. I was born much later. I have not studied that chapter, who killed Gandhi. But Gandhi had a development vision. I told that story back in the lecture, Green Lecture, that when on the eve of the Indian independence, a couple of months before, he was sitting in his own ashram spinning the wheel, and this lady came from US asking, from the Life magazine, prominent magazine then, in the 1947 March or April or May, sometime she came to him, traveled all the way by ship and then by train, 2-3 days, and then just to ask him a few questions. And she interviewed him, and then one of the questions was, Mr. Gandhi, what kind of model do you foresee or wish for India of development or of living? So he was answering all the questions, but at that question he got up, left the spinning wheel, went to his goat, started feeding the goat. She went after him, asked him again the same question. He left the goat, came back to the spinning wheel. So she got irritated. She said, what the hell? I mean, the old man is not understanding me. So she then asked him, putting words in his mouth, saying, Mr. Gandhi, do you think India should become a UK? Like you've been governed by Britain and UK for all these centuries. Look where is UK today with all this industrialization, our universities, and then look at India, how backward and how poor. Or then Gandhi took her hand in the hand and says, my dear lady, look what one UK has done, which is as small as one little state of India from 30 states today. What the development of UK to what it is today, back in 1947, has done to the world. and imagine the 300 million Indians, that was the population that time in India, would want to copycat and become UK. What will happen to the world? We'll need 3 more planets. So he was quite advanced that way.
That's
in his
wise.
thinking. Very wise. So, and then he was killed 5 months later. India got independence in August 1947. In January 48, he was shot dead. Who will shoot a 80-year-old man? Why do you shoot a 80-year-old man? He's anyway going to die in 5-10 years. So I sometimes feel it's a kind of a poetic thing which happened, that he had to die for India to rise. For a certain developmentalist model, growth model to take place, because he was standing in the way with his. He was such a power. Indians heard him when he said, "Don't do this." 300 million Indians followed him without WhatsApp, without social media. He must have done something so great, and the whole world respects him. He's one name that everybody knows around the planet almost. Gandhi is like, sometimes they make a joke, Coca-Cola and Gandhi and McDonald's are known everywhere. Yeah. So
we have in Africa a person in the same history called Thomas Sankara. He was killed even. He's from Burkina Faso.
Thomas Sankara?
Yeah.
Never heard.
He was killed in 1987, and he was a revolutionary against imperialism.
And which country was he from?
Burkina Faso.
Thomas
Sankara.
Sankara. He was a Burkina person also.
Yep.
And he's known in Western Africa or all over North Africa?
Western Africa, Northern Africa, because he was revolutionary in
You know Thomas Sankara. Okay. Never heard. He has written things, or people have written about him?
You can find easily things.
Okay,
even speeches and...
It's really. I thought you were about to say there is a person in Africa like him. I thought you will say Mandela. And I thought so.
Mandela is another narrative and story. But
exactly.
Yeah, we still also have Lumumba, Patrice Lumumba also. So there is few person who was trying to be against the movement of capitalism in early 80s after the independence, and the reality showed itself that colonialism is still there in Africa. And
it's all around the world. Only that some countries are playing along with it. Indians used to be quite critical of capitalism and also of colonialism, but of late, last 20 years, after liberalization, this narrative has changed. India is now on the bandwagon of growth. Market economy is good. Principles are good.
It's weird because in India, at least you mentioned that, monotheist religion has place somewhere, but in India...
Capitalism and monotheism is... And I am maybe dropping a bomb here right now. I didn't want to say that. I sometimes feel, because I come from India, and India has the second largest Muslim population in the world after Indonesia. All the countries of Islam, minus India and Indonesia, all the countries put together, MENA countries and Gulf countries and Central Asian put together have less Muslims than India. In number.
Bangladesh also.
But Bangladesh until 1970 was India. It was So, and then Pakistan was taken from India. If Pakistan and Bangladesh was not divided by the British, India was the largest Muslim population on the planet. So,
but in India, I have the feeling that, Eastern philosophy of free will, of spirituality, Buddhism, Zen is coming from there. It's another way of seeing things, and Western people go to India to have.
Well, few of them. We see them as a lot of people coming. A couple of 100,000 people coming. But then imagine 480 million Europeans and 400 or maybe 370 million Americans. And then even Latin Americans are very, very, they may be poor Latin Americans, but they're actually totally the harborers of Western outlook. Just that they are kept in the middle income trap. The all continent of Western South America is the best example of middle income trap. They are the backyard of America. They were the first colony America made after Second World War. Latin American countries, Argentina, Brazil, Venezuela, all these, Panama and all that. And they're neither rich nor poor. They're like, You don't let them die. You don't let them live. You just keep them on a drip. Put them in the intensive care, and you put them on a drip. That's where you keep them. That's a middle income trap. And why we didn't say one important thing about the middle income trap. It's actually not a concept which I have developed or something. It's by the World Bank experts. That why middle income? Capitalism needs new markets all the time. It needs, and also there's another compulsion of capitalism. Or market economy, let me put it. Capitalism is a very loaded word. It's a very ideological word. Many people around the world who are thinkers, when you talk of capitalism a lot, their minds shut. They say, no, he's an ideological person. He's talking of capitalism. Let's not listen to him. So it's like you're a communist if you're criticizing capitalist, you're a communist.
Which the nearest other word we can use?
I call it
dominance.
I call it market economy, market-driven economy, accelerated, modern, technologically driven market economy, consumer-driven market. I don't know. I know the word capitalism brings it to the point, but we need a new vocabulary. I don't know. I don't have it yet. Middle income trap is that So let's stick to the word. Capitalism needs new markets. It goes to different countries, uses their raw material, their cheap labor, outsources its production systems there. This is what they did with China. This is what they did with Latin America too. Then those countries, which they're using to fuel their own prosperity, also start growing slowly. So China started coming up. And then they get afraid, we need to stop it now, because then he'll become our competitor, our contender. So then you have to pull out your economy, your resources from there, your investments. So now the next China is India.
The West allow countries like Emirates and Qatar to move through the income level countries.
Oh, no. That is something. No, it is not. I don't think so. It's the West. In that,
the system.
I think what happened is that a lot of, the fuel. The fundamental fuel of the modern capitalism of the West is petrol. It has been gas and petrol for the last 130 years, 140 years. That all came from Middle East, primarily Iran, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, all these countries, Kuwait and all, right, Iraq. That money was administered. That was a model that Emiratis developed. They became a bank for all these countries. So an area was required, like Singapore was required for the growth of Hong Kong and Taiwan and all that, and to park Asian money. So Emirates became that, and Emirates also have its own fossil fuel reserves. And they had so much money over the last 100. West can only borrow from them. And then that's where you see that why is Dubai in the middle of the desert such a civilization? It's actually totally aberration.
Dubai don't have fuels and petrol.
Yeah, maybe not.
They are tradesmen.
They're tradesmen, middlemen, yeah, and the administrator and the bankers of the world. So I was about to say something which I became shy of. Coming from India, which is the second largest Muslim country, I could study Islam a lot. It's a part of India. It's like I'm almost like half Muslim, if you want. I am not believer as a believer, but it's in me. It's in me. It's all around you. Same way, every Indian Muslim is also Buddhist and Hindu. It's all around him. It's plural society living together. And so what I'm saying is that I sometimes feel that Sunni Islam, probably even Shia Islam, I don't know, even Islam is very materialistic. It's just that the best example is look at Saudi Arabia, the way they are living, the way they look at Emirates. And so we have to beg that question which you and me were discussing before the interview outside, that can we have a proposition that as long as we don't become them, we will criticize them?
Yeah, this is the point.
And if that is the point, that's where the Westerners don't take us seriously. Because they also feel somewhere, he's just crying and shouting.
And we are asking money.
And asking for money. Give us aid, give us multilateral aid. And why? Because you are a colonizer, you robbed us. I am saying like for just transition, yeah, let's have just transition. But just transition means we have to change ourselves, our own corruption, our own
Rules.
And if women are suppressed in countries of the global south, then it is not the north coming and telling them to suppress. We have to. It's our own cultural problem. This global south has not culturally revolutionized itself. There has been no cultural revolution as such. And let me now also, I'm trying to balance everything. It's very difficult for the victim of suppression to revolutionize himself also.
Sometimes we talk about decolonizing the mind from the past, because if we are carrying some, past thoughts, we are also in jail in the present.
Yeah.
In some ways, when you mentioned Islam, you don't have to be shamed in this point. One day I was talking with a philosopher here in Tunis. He told me, from his point of view, that Islam is fundamentally capitalist, because in the 5 main rules of Islam, there is one rule that it recognizes that there is poor and there is rich. And the rich have the responsibility to give the money to the poor. So from the main roots, there is this vertical relation between people. And it's a base for a capitalist way of dealing. And
I think the worldview has very questioned. We have to question the worldview. What do I mean by worldview? What is the view I have as a human being towards objects, towards wood, towards him, towards iron, towards a tree, towards sand, towards earth? If my view is a colonizing view, that earth is there to serve me, the animal is there to serve me, I can cut and eat to make my body strong,
but it brings us to spirituality.
then I'm a colonizer.
It's a spiritual problem.
It's
then.
a very fundamental thing to say, I know. And it's also intellectually very contentious. Yeah.
So to not be in a greed situation, to control himself, to control his ego, to not be in to be humble, to be in gratitude. So all this value.
So I'll tell you something very interesting. The economist like Amartya Sen, who is like Nobel Prize winner of Indian origin, there was a terminology used in the 1970s and the 80s called the Hindu rate of growth.
Okay.
Because the West was, in the 1970s, it is waiting. Oh no, we gave you independence in 1947 and you bloody Indians are not getting anywhere. You're just stuck somewhere with your bloody $600 per capita income. Why are you not growing? Why are you not going? Look at Emirates, look at Hong Kong, look at Singapore, look at Dubai. Why are you? And that Indians being stuck was called Hindu rate of growth. It meant exactly that. The Hindus are so spiritually stuck. They are so free of greed, perhaps. I'm not saying they are free of greed, but this was the denotion. There was the notion that maybe Hindus and Buddhists are so free of greed. They don't care. They are just happy. There's a tree. There are fruits. Kids are playing, and I don't need a Mercedes. I don't have to fly. So let's talk of some attributes of capitalism also. Capitalism is premised upon infecting the mind and colonizing the mind by selling to you Gucci bag is the real bag from Chanel. It's the real bag. Everything else is crap. Then you're colonized.
You're corrupted.
Yeah. A camera made in China is crap. Only a Nikon or a German invention is good. Only Mercedes is a real car. Porsche is a real car. Everything else is crap. So it is symbolic. The symbols are placed in the minds. So colonization currently is going on, is also embedded in the idea of development. We are told what is happening. So first they colonize us also. There is no they, maybe our books. What is happiness? Even happiness idea is defined. If my grandmother was washing her clothes with her hands all her life and she was happy, suddenly her daughter-in-law feels, no, I need a washing machine. If I don't have it, I'm not happy. Then her daughter-in-law's daughter-in-law, after 30 years, says, I want a fully automatic machine. Until then, I'm not happy. So happiness idea is changing. But who is changing? Products. Products are not products, they are the harbinger of message. Every product, that's why I said Christianity or even probably Hinduism, even every religion goes into products also. So, that's why I said the table is a Christian.
In some ways, I start thinking that religion, if they still be blind on what capitalism do, so in some ways they are in the same direction. Because
There's a debate.
maintain...
Capitalism is a new religion. There is a debate in the West by critical thinking economists. In the West, I live in Germany, so I can tell you in the university I've been teaching, there are economists who are very critical and alternative economists. They say capitalism is a new religion. Yeah, of course, there is a religious aspect to capitalism. See, most of the religions, if you have to juxtaposition traditional theological religion against capitalism, there is one very, very, very basic difference. Every religion promises, religions are also markets, they sell you something. Religions traditionally sell you the idea of afterlife. After death, what happens? Every religion has a theory. Hindus believe in rebirth. Abrahamic religion says, oh, that's blasphemy. How can you talk of rebirth? No, there is an ultimate court and the judgment day. And Christianity will say, no, there's eternal life after death. So all religions are talking of afterlife. Capitalism talks of this life. Forget about it, what is after. Just enjoy now. Go to Texas, go to Las Vegas, fly around, go to Paris, go to Champs-Élysées, have your drinks, have your coffee, just enjoy your life. So that's why it's a success model. Because it says, oh, come on, who has seen? All the young people today use YOLO in their messages. You only live once, YOLO. That's capitalism, YOLO.
You make me remember Sri Rajneesh, Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh.
Oh, is he known in Tunisia? Okay.
And so he's in a life affirming, spirituality. But yeah, my question now, and we have 10 more minutes.
Okay.
So regarding the just transition.
Oh my God.
Which is controversial words. Now, transition, we are, since 30, 40 years, the world are like an evolution trying to find solution, but the solution are framed by the north to the south. And through all this paradigm, we are trying to move through this, scene. But in my opinion, there is no chance to go in any other place than staying in our main places.
I have the same feeling. I feel very cynical, very depressed, and very helpless. I have seen the best of my friendships I had when I was a student in Europe. I came from India. When I came in the 1990s, middle of the 90s, I was participant to grassroots struggles there as a very young boy. In India, grassroots ecological movements. Then there was no internet when I came to Germany. I came in 1994. I was a baby. I was so young. It's funny to even talk about it today. But there was no internet in 1994. The world was so different. There was no mobile telephone. I have seen everything happening there, mobile, internet, everything. So I feel helpless. I've seen, then my first friendships which happened there were mostly German young people, my students, who were always on the cycle. There were many students having a car. It was normal for a German student to have a car. But there were many who denied the car and said, no, I will only have a cycle. So they were called alternatives. They became vegetarians, eating their muesli and yogurt, and had their cycle. And they were the ones talking of alternatives to capitalism. I have seen with aging, now that we have all aged 20 years down the line, my best friends turning capitalistic. They themselves will not want to see it that way. In their subjectivity, they are still the same, but their choices have changed, their preferences have changed, their lifestyles have changed. But you see, living in Germany, it's a very individualistic society. Even if you find one person who wants to help the other person, just the very fact that he wants to help the other person, he feels that he's an alternative. It's the fact.
Yeah, which is normally normal.
Which is normally normal in every part of the world,
Yeah.
to help other people in society, in your neighborhood, without even thinking you're doing a favor.
Yeah.
People don't even say thank you. If you help somebody, they don't say thank you in India.
Why he's doing such like that?
Yeah, it's normal. I help you, you help me whenever the need be. Why should I thank you for that? But in that part of the world, you have to thank. Because when you say thank you, the contract is over. I give you something, you say thank you, contract is over.
Yeah.
If you don't say thank you, it's a continuation. It's a continuation in eternity of human relationship. With thank you, that moment is over. That subject is over. So I'm saying that's the level of dissonance we have, that living in India, I go to Germany every year, many times, that I have seen my best friends, when you argue with them today about capitalism and you blame them, if I blame them and say, oh, you have changed, then they have tears. And they say, oh, no, I didn't change. Look, I still help people. But that's not how you've changed. You used to help before, you help now. That's where you've not changed. But you can't take that as a sign of being not a capitalist. You're accumulating money in your account. You may still use your cycle. But when you were a student, you had 10 euros in your account. Now you have 50, 60, 100,000 euros in your account. Where did they come from? So should I be expected to remain poor? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying think about, in your self-narrative, in your subjective narrative, it's about whether you think you're a capitalist or not, or is it even possible to jump into the muck? Muck? Dirt. When the earth becomes mucky, when rain comes, sand becomes muck. Is it possible to jump in the muck and not be dirty? It's not possible. You're not a lotus flower. You know lotus flower? The flower.
Lotus, yeah.
Lotus, yeah. So in India, it grows everywhere. So there are a lot of stories in Hinduism and Buddhism that a person should try to become like a lotus, because it grows in muck. It needs muck to grow, dirt. It stinks. But it's the most beautiful flower in the world. And it is clean. It comes from the muck and it's clean and so big.
We have a fruit like that we called Hindi, which comes from a very hard,
Hindi?
Yeah.
It comes from India.
I never imagined that.
Yeah. So, what was your last question? We had only 10 minutes and
Yeah, it's about transition. It's about transition. And it's about this game, this fake game, this weird and
So what I
bad-looking
think
game.
I close it down into 3 minutes. I hope so. If you put the timer here and I don't overstep my time. See, the message I was trying to give for yesterday, most of it can be put into 3 minutes. Just transition is possible. Although in my eyes, it's an old wine in new bottles. It's an old jargon of developmentalism and new terminologies. I try to sell the development as a terminology. In its etymology, always means going up, becoming wider, becoming higher. But that's not development actually means. It only means unwrapping. And transition also means from A to B. State A to state B. Means something's wrong. A, we have to go to B, or if something is not wrong, still we want to change. Fine. So both are change. And if you look at the attributes of just transition, it sounds nice. It's a nice language. We have to change. We have to go down with corruption. We have to treat our marginal population. But it is not prescribing how. And when you get into the prescription of the literature of just transition, it sounds almost like it has been taken from USAID or Ford Foundation or Oxfam or GTZ, GIZ. That kind of rhetoric jargon is found. The same old developmentalist talk. I think just transition is possible if one premise is fulfilled. That the fat contracts itself. So I will use one concept from the book I wrote, which you mentioned in the introduction paper here, 20 years back,
One
Fairness
is-
in a Fragile World, the memo, that it uses, and my co-author, I was his co-author, a junior. He's my teacher in writing books, Mr. Wolfgang Sachs. He's very interesting. He said, we talk of poverty alleviation. He's 25, 30 years older to me, so he was telling me, since he is a young man, UN programs, UNDP, UNEP, all these World Bank talk of poverty alleviation. But we have to do wealth alleviation. It's not poverty which requires alleviation, wealth requires alleviation. Sharing, the whole idea is sharing. Can the West share? The conundrum West is facing today, and I want to end with this from my side, is that I don't think so humans are, because we talked of pessimism and can we change anything? I don't think so. And I talked about my friends in Germany. I've seen them change. So I've seen them change. I've seen Indians, my cousins and my friends and my brothers become market economy based capitalists. So I don't think so humans can change. But something interesting is happening, and that is nature is forcing us to change.
Yeah, I like this phrase. Yeah.
The limits are there now. They are already staring in the face. And that's where the West and the global North is getting nervous. That's where they're talking about BRICS is coming up as a balance of power. They are nervous now. Nervous because they know that the systems they have put in place for the last 150, 200, 300 years, the rules of the game of capitalism are now known to the kids. Kids were global South, which we could control. Now those kids are playing according to our rules. And interestingly, we taught them the rules because we went to China and made China into the West. Now they know how to play the game. They have seen through the rules. They're playing the game according to our rules of the game. So now West has only two opportunities: to either militarily control the South and colonize the South. Militarily means going back to the past in the 14th century, that the Western global Northern armies entered the global South and suppressed them. Don't develop like us. That will mean a lot of blood, lot of killing. It's even possible. They talk of national sovereignty, isn't it? The whole Völkerrecht, or how to say, international law is based on nation states are sovereign. You cannot enter. If Mr. Hussein entered Kuwait, then he was bombed. So, but I can tell you one thing. If tomorrow Brazil, who is a nation state, decides to burn down the entire rainforest, the Amazon, which is its own property, isn't it? We in the West love to talk about property rights. Let's presume as a model, if Brazil wants to burn down all its forests, it's a model. West will send its armies to stop Brazil. I am promising you this will happen. Then I will ask my Western counterparts in the UN, what happened to the national sovereignty principles you sing so much? What about the property rights principles? What happened to that?
No,
it's their own property. They are allowed to burn it because you had forest in the global North. Why you brought down all the forests to develop and make autobahns? So I think the limits of nature are there now, and they will stop us.
Yeah, from our perspective, just to comment what we were face and see from the Western world the previous 1 year is that this values is illusions. It's always comes to power and interest. So when it comes to defending their interests, the Western world they don't care
has
about
double morals.
Yeah, and the last thoughts that I want to share. For me, just transition is about deprogramming people, individual, starting from there. And it's also available for every dogma. I mean, not only being slave on capitalism, but every dependence in life. So deprogramming, having such a free possibilities and will, and then you have to choose basically on your reality and direct reality. So it's a long journey, and I think from this possibility that the transition can allow, it's very important to have some courage to be creative. I mean, and in the same time to use the tools that they present the system present, and to try to, through these rules, to move. And I mentioned yesterday in the Green Lecture that we, in some ways, miss the opportunity to use the crypto money time and emergent to use it like, currency for development, or currency that we can control and direct it in just one direction, not allow people to use this kind of crypto or create another crypto to buy or to do a lot of stuff. So, this is my last word. So please, the floor is yours to say some words to close this interesting conversation.
The most difficult thing is to close is your last point I can see on the sheet of paper here. Is there an alternative to capitalism? And I myself am a entitled individual, enjoy their rights. I talk like this the way I talk because I believe that all the people who are entitled to the privileges of market economy, and if they come to the perspective that, because I'm enjoying it, I should not talk about it, I should not criticize it, then nothing will change. I think, I am criticizing the paradigm, the dominant one. I keep looking for alternatives. All the alternatives I get into my mind are maybe just move away from the civilization, take a little piece of land and just make your own food and just live there. I was not brought up in that. I was a very urban child. So for me to live that is, up until now, been very difficult. As I said, I think there is an alternative to capitalism, that is sharing. And I don't think so North will share, or even the elites of the South will share with their own poor population. I don't think so. So if we don't want a scenario of the French Revolution where the poor storms the palaces of the monarchs, we'll have to wait for some very pressing moments. So either the aliens have to come from some other planets, and suddenly the Earthlings will all become one, united against them.
But we missed the Corona time.
Corona brought the worst out of us.
At that time, the alien was Corona, so it make all the planet together.
The alien was Corona, you're right. And it brought the worst in us out. But
yeah. And we were seeing something like surrealistic. Countries robs plane of vaccines and don't allow them to go to other countries.
Yeah, but I think alien is a different thing. If alien is an authentic alien, not a coronavirus still was created somewhere. We don't know where. That's the jury's out there. It came from somewhere, from some lab in China, or it was America putting the blame on China, or it was European companies. I don't know.
It comes from our scene.
Yeah.
Our, extraverse, so different way or weird way of living or consuming or traveling, or I don't know. That's but if I was just using the metaphor of being alien, so what I wanted to close with is that I think I don't believe any alien race or alien will come to us. I think we will just living here. We'll face the limits, and the limits will bring the new choices. That will be the alternative for capitalism. And I think the global North and the elites of the South, who are very rich also, will have to concede to the fact that they'll have to share. They'll have to share. There's no other way. Either they'll have to share, or they'll have to turn into murderers. So my last word would be that South has terribly failed in finding an alternative, myself included, although I've devoted most of my life in looking for these alternatives. I don't have them, but we probably should take a departure away from an absolute vision of alternative. Maybe there are small steps which are alternatives. Maybe we should look into daily life small steps. Even if involuntarily, Global South is contributing a lot to the saving of the planet by being poor. I am saying involuntarily. But not
means,
consuming and not being rich.
But involuntarily means if given the chance, maybe they all want to be rich, but Global North is doing its part to keeping them down. And even there is a thought process which is different from the global north.
It's frustrating to say that, but yes, true.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Thank you, Heyman.
Well,
Thank
my pleasure.
you. Yeah.
My first podcast in life. A lot of firsts. First time in Tunisia, first podcast, yeah.
So good luck to your next book.
Yes. It's in progression, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.